Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Nathan Kokernot's Miracle Readiness channel. And I am plugging away at the second chapter of the COA version, which you can get online for free, ACIM app or ACIM CE app at the App Store, and follow along. So we're going to go right into it. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to open to Chapter 2, Section 8, which is called The Sole Responsibility of the Miracle Worker. We said in a previous section that the miracle is an expression of miracle-mindedness. This is from one of the miracle principles in Chapter 1. The distinction has also been made here between miracle-mindedness as a state and miracle-doing as its expression. So miracle-mindedness is a state of mind. Miracle doing is the behavior that results from miracle-mindedness. Miracle-mindedness merely means right-mindedness in the sense that we are now using it. Right-mindedness neither exalts nor depreciates the mind of the miracle worker or of the miracle receiver. However, as a creative act, the miracle need not await the right-mindedness of the receiver. In fact, its purpose is to restore him to his right mind. But it is essential that the miracle worker be in his right mind, or he will be unable to reestablish right-mindedness in someone else. So this is nuanced, at least the way that I experience it, in that, let's say, the miracle worker, the one giving the miracle, needs to hold the truth for both the receiver and himself or herself, that they are a perfect son of God, just like me. And knowing that, holding that in the moment is what gives the potential for miracles. So it's pretty much all kind of hanging on the state of mind of the person giving the miracle, and how fully grounded in truth they are, to the extent that they can actually hold it for both people, hold the truth for both people. The healer who relies on his own readiness is endangering his understanding. He is perfectly safe as long as he is completely unconcerned about his readiness, but maintains a consistent trust in mine. Errors of this kind produce some very erratic behavior, which usually points up an underlying unwillingness to cooperate. These errors inevitably introduce inefficiency into the miracle worker's behavior and temporarily disrupt his miracle-mindedness. So this footnote just gives a example of this from Bill's. Bill was the co-scribe to Helen, and he his issue, which Jesus kept working with him on, was his own everyone is a son of God except me mentality, which many of us share. It's not what Helen was, the scribe of Course in Miracles, was dealing with. Her deal was the variability of her mind. She went from being in complete miracle readiness to being completely angry and resentful all the time. Her moods were very variable. um, which is just one expression of poor learning. And then Bill's expression of poor learning was that he didn't hand it over to God enough, that he sort of was under the misunderstanding that he had to do it. He had to be the teacher, and he was not fully confident. And you're not really meant to be fully confident in your own abilities or your own strengths to do this. You're meant to fall back into the humility of myself. I can do nothing. But if I unite my will with God's will, I can do anything. I can move mountains. So I was going to go for a couple of quotes to sort of support this second paragraph. Um, One of them is from, actually, two of them are from the workbook. First, from lesson 48, uh, paragraph 3. This is a lesson called There is Nothing to Fear. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you are trusting in your own strength. The awareness that there is nothing to fear shows that somewhere in your mind, not necessarily in a place which you recognize as yet, you have remembered God and let His strength take the place of yours. The instant you are willing to do this, there is indeed nothing to fear. So this is very reminiscent of the 12-step program, and I think one of the key tenets about the 12-step AA program that I really can get behind is that going to your higher power, which is the part of you that is connected to God, is a humble act of releasing responsibility, essentially. Like, if it's drinking is the addiction that you're dealing with, you have to acknowledge that of yourself, of your own strength, you cannot beat this. Monkey around your collar, I think is the way they say it. And then from that place of humility, trust in God's strength. The higher power, God, is in you, but it is not you. Another, um, I think, helpful quote is from the lesson before this: God is the strength in which I trust. If you are trusting your own strength, you have every reason to be apprehensive, anxious, and fearful. What can you predict or control? What is there in you that can be counted on? What would give you the ability to be aware of all the facets of any problem and to resolve it in such a way that only good can come of it? What is there about you that gives you the recognition of the right solution and the guarantee that it will be accomplished? So there's so much talk. Well, there's not so much talk, but there is a lot of talk in A Course in Miracles about the difference between grandeur and grandiosity. Grandiosity is basically this story right here, not seen. That, like, I am not in a position to even judge the lay of the land because my perceptive abilities are completely inadequate. Like, I do not see the truth. So, grandiosity is the ego, entirely an ego state of mind in which we basically, what's the word? The phrase is kind of blow ourselves up into being godlike, which is a very unfortunate um, turn of events because we are not, like, with these egos, we are fallible. With these perceptive sensory organs that are not there to deliver the truth about reality to us, we are of ourselves not capable. But when we really sink into the belief that, you know, God works through me, all I need to do is trust in Him, we can step into the grandeur that comes with accepting the atonement, accepting that the I that I'm referring to right now is not individual I, as in a natekokernot or whoever I. It is this greatest I that God is in charge of, the whole sonship. And if I am identified with that, I can then channel the words that the Holy Spirit will send me. They'll download them and I'll just say them. One last quote, which will actually be from tomorrow's or the next episode, but just to support what we're saying today. Uh, Paragraph 4. This is all, it's very technical stuff, but it's important. So that's why I'm skipping ahead to help try to make this graspable. Whenever you are afraid, it is a sure sign that you have allowed your mind to miscreate. That is, you have not allowed me to guide it. It is pointless to believe that controlling the outcome of misthought can result in real healing. When you are fearful, you have willed wrongly. This is why you feel you are responsible for it. You must change your mind, not your behavior, and this is a matter of will. You do not need guidance except at the mind level. Correction belongs only at the level where causation is possible. The term does not really mean anything at the symptom level where it cannot work. Okay, so it's again getting away from the act nice. This is, I'm from Minnesota, and that was kind of our state motto was act nice. Uh, it's getting past that into the feel nice department. Once we really have accepted God, we feel genuinely nice to the degree where acting nice is an effortless thing. We don't have to force it. We don't have to lie to ourselves about all these secret resentments and grievances that we're holding on to. But we have to like sink into that of myself, I can do nothing kind of humility before we can step into that grandeur. All right. We have established that for all corrective processes, the first step is know that this is fear. That's from Miracle Lesson 48 from the first chapter. Know first that this is an expression of fear. Unless fear had entered, the corrective procedure would never have become necessary. If your miracle-working propensities are not working, it is always because fear has intruded on your right-mindedness and has literally upset it, i.e., turned it upside down, which is very interesting because I know that's one of the things that the mechanics of the sensory visual perception does is literally turns things upside down to make sense out of it. Um, and it also just speaks to what I'm personally working on, which is, again, there's a tendency among us Course in Miracles students to go into bliss ninnyhood, which is like just pure denial of anything wrong in the world. And we're not being honest with ourselves. If we're still in this world, we need to acknowledge that we do experience fear, and we need to learn how to recognize it as it comes up, because sometimes the fear is very subtle. It could be like just a slight irritation when somebody says something that wasn't to your liking. You have, and I think, he'll talk about holy relationships much more later in later chapters. But when we enter into a holy relationship where we're kind of checking each other all the time and calling each other out, that's when we start to become very hyper aware of even the subtle feelings that were brought about by fear. And we have to look at them rather than just gloss over them. That's a mistake that I think I make all the time, that I'm still learning just what it feels like to truly like see the fear, see the anger fully, experience it fully, while at the same time not getting wrapped up in the story that we think, our misinterpretations have basically assigned responsibility in the world for why we're feeling fear. we have to face the fear without the story. And that's a nuanced thing that I think we learn how to feel into. But we have to acknowledge that we are fearful before we can really, it's like we have to see the darkness before you can transcend the darkness. All forms of not right-mindedness are the result of refusal to accept the atonement for yourself. If the miracle worker does accept it, he places himself in the position to recognize that those who need to be healed are simply those who have not done so. When you feel the vast radiation range of your own inner illumination, it will be because you are aware that your right-mindedness is healing. Um, well, I'll just read the footnote here. The reference to the vast radiation range of your own inner illumination was originally about an experience of Helen's. It probably refers to the following experience recorded in her autobiography. One experience took place when Bill, my husband, and I were at the theater together in the summer of 1965. I think this was before she'd even had the initial miracle with Bill, her colleague, the "there must be another way" conversation. Sitting in the dark at the theater, I was aware of a strong inner light that began in the chest area and grew increasingly intense and encompassing until it seemed to radiate throughout the theater and include everyone there. My awareness of the light, which lasted for some 10 minutes, was accompanied by a deep sense of peace and joy. I could hardly believe for a time that no one else was aware of it. And she'd had many, not many, but she'd had a few of these experiences. One she described in 10 years, 15 years prior to that on the subway, where she was completely in love with everybody on the subway, even though it was really just your basic stinky New York subway. The sole responsibility of the miracle. Did I read that already? This, I think I read this yesterday or in the last episode, and now I'm remembering it like it's just a minute ago. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement himself. This means that he knows the mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the atonement. Once he accepts this, his mind can only heal. By denying his mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, he has placed himself in a position where he can undo the level confusion of others. The message which he then gives to others is the truth that their minds are really similarly constructive and that their own miscreations cannot hurt them. By affirming this, the miracle worker releases the mind from over-evaluating its own learning device, the body, and restores the mind to its true position as the learner. It should be re-emphasized that the body does not learn any more than it creates. The body is a learning device for the mind. It does not have the power in itself to introduce actual learning errors. As a learning device, it merely follows the learner, but if it is falsely endowed with self-initiative, it becomes a serious obstruction to the learning it should facilitate. So I think this is all just about that mistake of just acting nice instead of working on correcting the mind itself, which is going to put you in a being nice or a feeling nice kind of state of mind. And when we're acting nice and not feeling nice, do you understand that we've really just like removed the conflict from the external world and re-established it in the internal because we're not in alignment with our actions? We're not feeling as nice as we're acting. Only the mind is capable of illumination. Spirit is already illuminated. and the body in itself is too dense. The mind, however, can bring its own illumination to the body by recognizing that density is the opposite of intelligence. That's just a play on words, which he loves to do, for Bill's sake, actually. Bill was a real lover of puns, and so Jesus was sure to throw a pun in often into the text, and therefore unamenable to independent learning. It is, however, easily brought into alignment with a mind which has learned to look beyond density toward the light. Corrective learning always begins with awakening the spiritual eye and turning away from belief in physical sight. The reason this entails fear is because you are afraid of what your spiritual eye will see, which was why you closed it in the first place. We said before that the spiritual eye cannot see error and is capable only of looking beyond it to the defense of atonement. From text 2:6, which was just a couple days ago, the spiritual eye literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. There is no doubt that the spiritual eye does produce extreme discomfort by what it sees. The thing that you forget is that the discomfort is not the final outcome of its perception. When the spiritual eye is permitted to look upon the defilement of the altar, it also looks immediately toward atonement. So it's permitted to look upon the defilement of the mind. The mind is defiled, which usually we won't let ourselves do. We'll just transfer the defilement to the body and we'll get sick and now say the body is defiled. But we have to look at our own misthoughts, our misbeliefs, if we want to correct them. It also looks immediately toward atonement. Nothing which the spiritual eye perceives can induce fear. Everything that results from accurate spiritual awareness merely is channelized toward correction. Discomfort is aroused only to bring the need to correct forcibly into awareness. And that's what back to the part about really being sensitive to our feelings. If we've done too much work on numbing our feelings, we're not even going to sense the discomfort is there, which means we won't be able to summon the correction because we will have missed it entirely. What the physical eye sees is not corrective, nor can it be properly corrected by any device which can be physically seen. So physical sight has nothing to do with any of this. As long as you believe in what your physical sight tells you, all your corrective behavior will be misdirected. The reason why the real vision is obscured is because you cannot endure to see your own defiled altar. But since the altar has been defiled, this fact becomes doubly dangerous unless it is perceived. This perception is totally non-threatening because of the atonement. The fear of healing arises in the end from an unwillingness to accept the unequivocal fact that healing is necessary. The fear arises because of the necessary willingness to look at what you have done to yourself. Whew. Real accountability. That's what this is talking about, is taking real accountability for your own experience of suffering. Healing was an ability which was lent to human beings after the separation, before which it was completely unnecessary. So until we walked away from God, we didn't have any need for healing. And that was the separation. Like all aspects of the space-time belief, healing ability is temporary. However, as long as time persists, healing remains among the stronger human protections. This is because healing always rests on charity, and charity is a way of perceiving the true perfection of another, even if he cannot perceive it himself. But it's not just saying it, it's not going through the motions, it's truly seeing it. That's what actually makes the difference. Most of the loftier concepts of which humanity is capable now are time-dependent. Charity is really a weaker reflection of a much more powerful love encompassment, which is far beyond any form of charity that humanity can conceive of as yet. Charity is essential to right-mindedness in the limited sense in which right-mindedness can now be attained. So, it's, I guess, important at this point to just acknowledge that the spiritual path is often, this particular spiritual path is often analogized as a ladder, and where he's slowly taking us one rung of the ladder at a time up the ladder, okay? Which means things that are said later in the book are probably going to seem like they're contradicting things that are being said now, but it's because later in the book we will have greater abilities as channels to the Holy Spirit so that we can actually understand those concepts that will be presented later that are paradoxical to what we're learning right now. And that's maybe one of the things that upsets a lot of people about A Course in Miracles is that there is some paradox and contradiction written into it. And yet it's because in the timeline of our own development, our own spiritual development, we need to hear things earlier on that will be sort of redacted or given more nuance later on as we have progressed. Charity is a way of looking at another as if he had already gone far beyond his actual accomplishment in time. Since his own thinking is faulty, he cannot see the atonement himself, or he would have no need for charity at all. The charity which is accorded him in both an acknowledgement that he is weak and a recognition that he could be stronger. The way in which both of these beliefs are stated clearly implies their dependence on time, making it quite apparent that charity lies within the framework of human limitations, though toward the higher levels. So I just think about, like, maybe a school guidance counselor. If a school guidance counselor were showing up at every meeting with a kid who's having some behavioral issues, just thinking, oh, this kid's a piece of shit, then obviously that's not going to be a very good school guidance counselor, not a very well liked one either. Um, but it's like if that same school guidance counselor showed up every day, truly seeing the potential uh, and the perfection in every one of the students that they dealt with throughout the day, you can imagine how much that would twist things around into being a motivational force in these kids' life to basically show up as their best selves because they are believed in by this school guidance counselor. So we're wanting to be that kind of school guidance counselor. It's just not necessarily in schools, unless we are a school guidance counselor. Okay, we said before that only revelation transcends time. And the footnote here is from another miracle principle, 48. Only revelation transcends it, time, having nothing to do with time at all. The miracle, as an expression of true human charity, can only shorten it at best. It saves time. It must be understood, however, that whenever you offer a miracle to another, you are shortening the suffering of both. This introduces a correction into the record which corrects retroactively as well as progressively. The record seems to be a non-physical record of all of our thoughts, words, and deeds. I think the Akashic records is what they're referring to. This passage suggests that giving a miracle actually alters the record, erasing errors recorded for both the past and probable future. So we can correct past mistakes and the effects of those past mistakes. And it just reminds me, and I think this is probably going to be too much, but the double slit experiment, which is, I think, it's been around since the beginning of the 19th century, and it was what helped scientists begin to understand the observer effect, or at least it helped some scientists understand the observer effect, which is that the observer had an effect on the experiment. It had whether it was being observed or not was the deciding factor, and whether the particles, when they landed on the screen after going through the two slitted screen, appeared like we thought they should appear or not, basically, like they fulfilled our mind's prediction or not. It was dependent on whether or not we were watching it, watching the particles go through with like a camera. And John Bell came along later and put the camera behind the screen with the two slits in it. So the particles had already gone through whatever slit they'd gone through before they were measured and recorded. And still, even with his adjustment, adding the element of time to this, you could still make it happen the other way. The experiment would have the outcome as though it were being recorded which slit it was going in before it went in, which means time is such a myth, essentially, and we can reverse time. We can go back in time and correct errors, which is, I think a true forgiveness moment, like where two people reconcile um, and lay down old grievances, is one of those kinds of miracles where you have undone many years of nonsense. I don't know if that was appropriate to share or not, getting in a heady science into it, but it's the best I could do at kind of illustrating this point that yeah, that we can correct retroactively as well as progressively. Okay. So we'll leave it there for today. And I thank you once again for joining me. And if you're finding this helpful, please like and subscribe and hit the little bell in the corner. And besides that, I hope that you have a wonderful day, everybody, full of blessings and miracles. And I will see you again next time. Bye for now.